Let's talk about what happened in the Philippines earlier. Gunfire inside a parliament building, a senator in hiding, an international arrest warrant hanging over it all. Pure chaos. Okay, let's break it down. Ronald Dela Rosa was the police chief behind ex-leader Rodrigo Duterte's brutal war on drugs. And he's taking refuge in / refusing to leave the Senate as authorities attempt to arrest him on orders from the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The standoff is exposing deep tensions inside the Philippine government and raising questions about justice, sovereignty and accountability after thousands of controversial killings. And when I say chaos, I really mean chaos. Just take a look yourself. Now, shortly after the shooting took place, the Philippines Interior Minister addressed the media in an attempt to calm the situation. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
There are no casualties, none. No one was hit, no one is wounded, no one was killed. We are in the process of determining who is behind this. The President has given strict instructions. Secure the senators, whoever they may be. Next, we are not here to arrest Senator Dela Rosa. In fact, we are here to protect him. Let that be clear. I made that very clear to his family. I repeat, we do not know who is behind this, but we will find them.
Just take a look at this surveillance footage. It shows law enforcement agents running down the Senate hallways on Monday as they chased Senator Ronald Dela Rosa inside the Senate building. Dela Rosa, the chief enforcer of Duterte's deadly war on drugs, was on Monday placed under the protective custody of the Senate after a brief standoff with law enforcement agents. Now, to get into all of the dirty details of all of this, I'm joined by Southeast Asia expert Phelim Kine. He is China correspondent for Politico in Washington, D.C. So thank you so much, Phelim, for joining us here on DW. What do you make of this shooting in the Senate?
It looks like a spectacular speed bump on the way to Ronald Dela Rosa's date at The Hague. I think that this is really indicative of the degree of anger and also the degree of just instability and chaos that the ICC warrant for Dela Rosa's arrest earlier this week has created. It's created political ripples, and it's obviously spurred an effort to apprehend him in the Senate, which today resulted in shots fired. And you can't help but appreciate the Interior Minister trying to calm people by saying it's okay, there were no casualties. The fact that there were shots fired within the Senate building in an apparent move to apprehend Dela Rosa. It's hard to give credence to the government's position that that wasn't what was going on. But, you know, we'll see what the investigation reveals.
Exactly. And there's been, you know, some real conflicting accounts about who was involved and how significant and alarming this all is. So what's your take on this escalation?
Well, I think that the Marcos government in the Philippines really feels that to a certain extent it has the wind under its wings to really start cleaning up some of the mess and the leftover accountability created by the Duterte regime, and really that 6-year reign of terror that Duterte and Dela Rosa, who was at the top cop at the time, really unleashed this campaign of terror, a so-called drug war that essentially was a war against the poor, that targeted some of the most impoverished and marginalized communities in the Philippines, and resulted in the deaths of upwards of 12 to 13,000 people. And there has been almost zero accountability for that. Finally, Duterte himself was apprehended and is waiting for trial, or is on trial in The Hague. But there were many willing executioners, lieutenants, starting with Dela Rosa, who also are, need to be brought to the dock in order to have a sense of who gave the orders, who pulled the trigger. For many Filipinos, and I've spent a lot of time in the country, particularly during that time of Duterte's drug war, where they really want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. They really want to make sure that those people who inflicted this on their country are brought to some measure of justice. And so it's messy. That's the nature of Philippine governance and justice to a certain extent, but all credit to whatever elements of the government are trying to make this happen. And again, there are a lot of unanswered questions, but let's see what unfolds in the next few days.
And just off the back of that, do you think that the ICC actually has enough evidence then to convict Dela Rosa of these crimes?
Oh my goodness, there are reams of evidence. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, who I was working with at the time, the United Nations, journalists, Philippine civil society groups. There is so much evidence pointing to how there was a calculated and really a sadistic campaign of killing that, again, was targeted some of the poorest people in the Philippines and targeted men, women, children. And Dela Rosa, aka The Rock, he was this smiling, glad-handing PR frontman for that killing campaign. And he rejected all efforts to have some measure of accountability. He made sure that police kept the foot on the gas in terms of those killings and never once tried to tap the brakes.
So it definitely wouldn't look good for him if he was actually captured by the ICC. Phelim, what does this incident tell us about the current state of the rule of law inside the Philippines?
Rule of law in the Philippines is shaky at best. Corruption is a huge problem in the Philippines. To a large extent, the wealthy and the powerful evade accountability for crimes large and small. The Philippines National Police is deeply gangrened with corrupt actors. And of course, the Philippines National Police itself has a long record of extrajudicial killings that go uninvestigated, that predated the Duterte regime by a couple of decades. So this is a country where there are good intentions. There are people working to ensure that rule of law is enacted fairly, but it is a very much an uphill challenge.
Well, Dela Rosa has issued a statement from his hiding place inside the Senate building. Let's just take a listen to that now.
We are no longer members of the ICC. Why are we insisting on carrying this out, on implementing this warrant of arrest issued by the ICC? We're under no obligation to carry out such a warrant of arrest. It is clear that it is all politics.
Okay, so he's just saying there that the Philippines have withdrawn from the ICC. So on what legal basis can the court still pursue him?
I mean, just because the Philippines exited the ICC during the Duterte era doesn't mean that it can't fulfill and comply with ICC directives. It's inaccurate for Dela Rosa to say that this is something that there is not an obligation, but there is nothing barring Philippine legal authorities from assisting the ICC in its investigations and apprehending, detaining, and handing over suspects, just as they would with for foreign countries with which they have friendly relations, or even better yet, extradition agreements. So Dela Rosa, and you could tell by the interview and his state of mind, is on shaky legal ground there. And my sense is that he's flailing, because I think he, justifiably so, that he feels that the legal walls are closing in on him. And there's probably only so much time that he can hide out in the Senate before he needs to actually emerge and face potential apprehension and, extradition to The Hague.
And now you mentioned earlier that President Marcos Jr. is in a bit of a difficult position here. Now, he says that the government wasn't behind this attempted arrest. How credible do you think that claim actually is?
It's questionable, and we have to realize that there are powerful political undercurrents that are also at play in the Philippines right now. So we know that within just the last 2 or 3 days, Marcos's vice president, Sara Duterte, the daughter of the former President Rodrigo Duterte, was impeached for alleged corruption, but also for alleged death threats against the president. So there are power factions, those that are aligned with former President Rodrigo Duterte and align with his daughter, and those that align with the Marcos camp. And so it's possible that what we're seeing play out in terms of this attempted apprehension of Dela Rosa, a key Duterte ally, is part of that dynamic. And again, we have to question the credibility of a claim by the government that they had no idea what was going on. The fact that armed men could enter the Senate to apparently try to apprehend Dela Rosa. But if hopefully there will be a transparent and predictable investigation to determine what exactly happened, because people need answers here.
Of course. Okay, so that is looking at what is going on inside the Philippines, but let's zoom out a little bit. What message does this situation send globally about accountability for alleged human rights abuses?
I think that this is a really hopeful moment. Both the fact that Duterte was arrested and is in the dock in The Hague, and the fact that now there's a move to bring to justice his lieutenants. Again, these were the willing executioners who implemented Duterte's diktat to kill, in Duterte's famous phrase, to fill Manila Bay with the bodies of suspected drug dealers. And so when you go back to 2016, 2017, 2018, at the height of the killings, it looked like the Philippines was in the depths of a deep, dark hole where accountability was impossible, and that those voices who were speaking out against these abuses were silenced or imprisoned. And so the fact that we're now at the point where under President Marcos that there are meaningful moves to bring accountability to this, that I think sends a message to other countries where they also might be suffering under autocratic regimes where rule of law is not happening and where people's lives are at risk. It shows you that the worm can turn, and that the autocrat in full control today can be the ICC suspect in The Hague tomorrow.
And where do you see all of this ending up then? Could we see arrest, political standoff, escalation? What's your take here?
So in the short term, it's clear that something has to happen to Ronald Dela Rosa. So his situation needs to be resolved in the sense that if obviously the ICC has issued an arrest warrant, and the government of President Marcos has to decide, are they going to follow through and arrest him one way or the other? It's clear that their intent to do that. So barring Dela Rosa evading justice and becoming a fugitive in his own country, which isn't an impossibility, he's going to be detained, he's going to be arrested. And I think that is going to really weaken this Duterte camp in terms of the political groups and forces that support him, because essentially they are taking apart brick by brick the Duterte power wall. And as that continues, it's going to become easier for Marcos to follow through on his own programs that the Duterte side, under Sara Duterte, his now impeached vice president, has blocked.
Phelim Kine, very insightful. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on DW and for your expertise there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we want to hear your thoughts on all of this too. What do you make of the situation in the Philippines? Leave your comments below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. I'm Hannah Hummel. Thank you so much for watching.